Welcome, everybody. My name's Justin Wood. I'm a trip developer here at Mountain Travel Sobek. We're really excited to be with you all today for a conversation about one of the most unique places on the planet, Phantom Ranch at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Thanks, everyone, for attending. We're going to take just a minute here to allow a few more folks to log on. We're just about a minute early. Once again, for the folks waiting on the line, my name's Justin Wood, and this is the Mountain Travel Sobek Grand Canyon Phantom Ranch Adventure webinar. We have more people joining the call here, and we'll get started in just 1 minute. Welcome, everyone. I'm Justin Wood. I'm a trip developer here at Mountain Travel Sobek, and we're excited to be with you today for a conversation about one of the most unique and coveted spots on the planet. This is our Phantom Ranch webinar, and we'll be talking today about Grand Canyon and Phantom Ranch trips to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Of course, as many of you will know, Phantom Ranch is notoriously difficult to access, both physically and in terms of obtaining reservations. So the Mountain Travel Sobek team is here today to shine a light for everybody on the call about the many details visitors need to consider when you are planning a visit. I am joined today by Julie Wilson and Tara Buffington, who will be helping us to monitor the chat and answer questions that may come in and ensure that we connect with everybody who's here looking for information about travel to the Grand Canyon Phantom Ranch. And I'm very happy to introduce our featured speaker today, and that is Josh Kloepping. Josh is an award-winning Grand Canyon guide. He is also the Mountain Travel Sobek Program and Operations Director for North America. Josh, could you tell us a bit more about your experience guiding, planning, and managing trips to Phantom Ranch?
Yeah. Thanks, Justin. Welcome, everyone. I've had an incredible opportunity to lead trips Phantom Ranch for over 10 years. My first trip, Phantom Ranch, was in 2010. During that period of time, I was able to lead dozens and dozens of trips visiting Phantom Ranch every single month of the year, and in every type of weather possible as well. I also was joined by guests ranging from ages of 7 to over 77 years old. Blessed to join guests as they took this trip to celebrate a milestone birthday or even celebrate surviving cancer. Had a group of friends celebrating their 50th high school reunion. But some of my most memorable trips were groups that I was joined with wounded veterans and Gold Star recipients who really overcome significant physical and mental injuries and really gain significant confidence in their ability as well as their desire for life when they hiked rim to rim across the Grand Canyon. So I've seen the canyon and Phantom Ranch through various walks of life at all times of the year.
Thanks so much, Josh. I know some of my favorite stories about the Grand Canyon are stories that I have heard from you. So I'm really looking forward to having you here to share all of your expertise with folks today. Could you help us get started with a bit of info about where Phantom Ranch is located and what it takes to get there. What airports might people need to be
Yeah,
thinking about using? What might your travel generally look like to get to Grand Canyon?
yeah, certainly. Lots of options available. Um, Phantom Ranch is located in the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Precisely, it's on the north side of the Colorado River in the main inner corridor of the Grand Canyon. That's in northern Arizona. So if you're traveling in from out of state, your easiest air um, entrance would be Phoenix, Arizona. This gives you about a 4 hour drive from Phoenix to the south rim of the Grand Canyon, or about a 5.5 hour drive to the north rim of the Grand Canyon. Vegas is another good option to start your travels to Grand Canyon. From Vegas to the south rim, again, about a 4 hour drive, and about a 4.5, 5 hour drive to access the north rim from Las Vegas. You also got an option to fly into Flagstaff. It's a much smaller airport, so check to see, what direct flights are or not available. But flying into Flagstaff would put you about an hour and a half drive from the south rim of the Grand Canyon.
Thanks so much, Josh. That's super helpful. And since we're talking about the unique and really remote location of Phantom Ranch here, could you give us a bit of background on how it came to even exist in the first place? A bit of the history of Phantom Ranch.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. You're absolutely right. It's very unique. There's signs in this area that it's been inhabited for nearly 4,000 years. Most recently, though, it started in 1907. A gentleman by the name of David Rust built a camp in this area. He planted some native trees for shade. He brought in livestock and made some pastures to grow hay. A little bit later, it was visited by Theodore Roosevelt, President Theodore Roosevelt, who loved the area and would actually visit it often. Shortly after this, the camp's concession was transferred over to the Fred Harvey Company, who hired the famous female architect Mary Coulter, who's actually designed and built the permanent structure that's still there today. It's been added on a bit, but she built this permanent lodging in 1922 and it opened to the public. A little bit later, during the Great Depression, the CCC made some significant upgrades to Phantom Ranch. They brought in the Trans-Canyon telephone line. They enhanced the plumbing and sewer infrastructure. They even built a swimming pool. Unfortunately, that swimming pool is no longer there today. But there are some photos of it hanging up in the cantina, which is pretty cool to see. Um, Throughout all this time, though, Phantom Ranch has really maintained its rustic charm. It's also noted as a historic hotel of America due to its history.
Oh, yeah, that's fascinating. And so, what is it like to visit Phantom Ranch today?
Yeah, it's much like it was visiting it in the 20s and 30s. A couple of additions have been made, but now today there are 11 cabins on the property. These cabins range from two-person up to 10-person cabins. There's also four dormitories. However, these dormitories are currently closed. They're doing some continued improvements on the water treatment facility in Phantom Ranch, and the dormitories have been closed with no noted opening date. These dormitories are gender specific. There's two female dorms and two male dorms. Each of those can accommodate 10 people. So between the 11 cabins and the four dormitories, when they're open, they can accommodate a total of 90 people a night in Phantom Ranch. There's also a centralized cantina in Phantom Ranch. This is where meals are served family style. It's also where there's a social hour. So those family style meals, there's two breakfasts and two dinners served daily. The breakfast seatings are at 5:30 a.m. and 7 a.m. And both meals are the same for this time. It's fantastic. Pancakes, really thick, proper bacon, fruit, scrambled eggs, coffee, of course, staple, orange juice. Um, those time windows, 5:30 and 7 a.m., are adjusted by 30 minutes during the summer months. They bump it up 30 minutes earlier to allow guests to get an earlier start during those hotter summer months. And I'll chat a little bit more about that heat later on. And then the famous dinners of Phantom Ranch. Again, two family style seatings here at 5 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. That early 5 o'clock seating is the steak dinner, and the later 6:30 seating is the stew dinner. Now, during stew, there are two options available. There's your classic beef and potato, and then there's also a vegetarian stew option as well. Again, it's accompanied with like a salad, cornbread, chocolate cake for dessert. It's pretty phenomenal what the staff is able to prepare and serve down in such a remote location. Now, while you do have to have a reservation as well to attend any of those seated dinners, the cantina is also open to the public twice a day from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And again in the evening after dinners are served from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Great place to go hang out, pick up some souvenirs and other sort of desirables. I'll chat a little bit more about that later as well.
That sounds great, Josh. And outside of the time that you'd spend in your cabin or exploring around Phantom Ranch or at the canteen during or after meal times, what other sort of activities might people look forward to in the evenings?
I'd check out a Ranger Talk. These vary throughout the season and vary by day. However, the talk of that night, its location and topic and timing will all be posted in the cantina. Topics vary from stargazing, history of Phantom Ranch, geology of the Grand Canyon, creepy crawly things that you might find or see around the ranch. Wide variety of topics, all up to the ranger. So I'd highly recommend joining one of those. There's typically two offered in the evening hours.
Oh, it sounds really terrific, and we have this photo here giving folks a sense of just what this space is like at Phantom Ranch. What can you tell us about what we're looking at
Yeah,
here?
classic fall time scene at Phantom Ranch. You see those historic, stone stacked buildings that so famously made by Mary Coulter. But you also see the picnic table there. There's a number of these throughout the ranch, and it's just a beautiful area to hang out, catch some shade, walk down to the creek, cool your feet. Um, Not uncommon at all to see deer, even a fox in the evening stroll through camp. So it really is a beautiful place. And you feel like you're nestled into the surrounding environment.
The fall colors against the canyon walls is just
Yeah,
such a stunning image to see there. So obviously
hard to beat.
uh, obviously such a special place. I know that for a lot of folks planning a visit, so much that goes into accessing Phantom Ranch due to its remoteness is really top of mind for people in the planning process. So, what more can you tell us about the various ways that a visitor can access Phantom Ranch, whether that's on foot from various points on the north or south rim or via the river?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's a remote location. It's hard to get to. You can see here in the map, but there are three trails that lead to Phantom Ranch, and they vary in distance as well as their starting point. The most common would be accessing Phantom Ranch from the south rim of the Grand Canyon. This is where the main Grand Canyon village is. It's open year round. Your shortest trail in would be the South Kaibab Trail. This is 7 miles, about 4,700 feet of elevation descent getting in. This trail is really unique and cool in that it follows a ridge line. The trail does, and so you get these really wide 180-degree expansive views as you're hiking in. That also means that you're mainly exposed. You don't have a whole lot of access to shade. There's also very few amenities offered on this trail. For instance, there's no water. So while it's the shortest hike, you also have to be able to carry your water needed for that entire 7 miles. While other trails may be longer, they offer access to water. So depending on the time of year, you may want to choose different trails. Another one coming in from the South Rim is the Bright Angel Trail. This one's slightly longer, 10 miles, but it offers ample shade as well as access to water. There's 3 water refilling stations along the way, multiple bathrooms along the way. I know that's important to some. Um, However, this trail is heavily trafficked. It is right there. That trailhead starts in Grand Canyon Village. People just visiting, even for the day, likely do a short stroll up and down this trail. So, especially near the rim, you're going to experience the most traffic on the trail. It's open year round as well, as is the South Kaibab Trail. Important to know. Then your other option is the North Kaibab Trail. This one hikes in from the north rim of the Grand Canyon. This is the longest hike in. This is 14 miles and the steepest, nearly 5,700 feet of elevation loss. That's over a mile of steady down. Um, there's very little traffic just due to the remoteness of getting to the north rim, um, which can be very pleasant. There's also 3 water filling opportunities along the way. I'll also note that you get access to the Bright Angel Creek about halfway in on this 14-mile hike. With proper water filtration, can also offer additional opportunities to refill your water. Again, just highlight it is steep. Of that 5,700 feet in elevation, you lose 7,500 or 75% of this in the first 7 miles. So it does a number on the knees. Something else to note on this trail is it's only accessible when the North Rim is open to the public, which is May 15th to October 15th. Um,
That's really helpful information. Why does the North Rim close?
the remoteness as well as the elevation and the weather that it sees. North Rim only sees about 10% of the total visitation that the entire Grand Canyon sees. Is that precipitation, the sheer volume of snow that the North Rim receives. It sits about 1,000 feet higher in elevation than the South Rim does, just over 8,000 feet. So at that elevation, they have a significant winter, and it's just not cost effective to keep the facilities cleared, plowed to maintain open year round.
That makes a lot of sense. So the South Rim Trail, South Kaibab, Bright Angel open year round. But
Yeah.
somebody who wants to visit the North Rim or potentially get to Phantom via the North Kaibab Trail will have to think about that seasonal closure as they're planning their trip. What trail are we looking at in this image, Josh? And is this fairly indicative of the trail conditions people can expect when they're hiking down to Phantom Ranch, the views, the sort of the exposure that people might deal with when hiking the canyon?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a hiker who is southbound on the South Kaibab Trail. They're just below Cedar Ridge on their way towards Skeleton Point. You see O'Neill Butte there just ahead of them. But you're exactly right. This is a great depiction of what to expect on the trails. They're well maintained. These are main corridor trails. They're maintained year round by the national park. Um, they're wide. They're about 4 feet wide. There's a very variety of rocks and steps up and down, water logs to help divert water off the trail, prevent erosion. But as you stated there, exposure. Through my years of guiding in the canyon, you certainly witness people who have a little bit of apprehension to heights, and that may be a concern of them. You do have that. You can't descend, you know, into the bottom of the Grand Canyon without experiencing that. But you see here, you have ample distance to be able to get away from that exposed edge, hug a canyon wall, stay a body lengths away from the canyon edge throughout that hike.
That's great, Josh. That's a great overview of the different options and some of the different considerations. And this image gives us a really nice feel for what that terrain can be like and the exposure
Yeah.
and the views. Generally speaking, like what should visitors expect on the trail based on where they choose to hike then from these options and also what time of year they choose to travel?
Yeah. It's really difficult to generalize that. It varies, and, and you hate to have that as your answer, but I'll try to put it in perspective here. We talked about some of the elevation changes. And we talked about some of the mileage differences, but general terms, 10 miles. If you want to hike in to Phantom Ranch, you should be capable of hiking roughly 5,000 feet in elevation for 10 miles in multiple days. Um, Back to back days if you're going to go in and out in one day. Of course, that varies. If you're coming in from the North Rim, we just talked about be prepared for 14 miles. You can do it in a short of 7 miles from the South Rim as well. Little bit, about 1,000 foot difference in elevation if you come in from South Rim or North Rim, but in general, 5,000 feet. Something to be mindful of, though, is the temperature difference in two ways. The temperature difference from the rim down to Phantom Ranch. Again, you're talking about a vertical mile in elevation change here. Not uncommon at all for the temperatures on the rim of the canyon, whether it be the North Rim or the South Rim, being 30 degrees cooler than the temperatures at the bottom of the canyon down at Phantom Ranch. This also varies significantly throughout the year. So we talked about, the rims being 8,000 feet in elevation. Now you put in time of year, they could have a foot of snow in the winter months, or in the summer months, it could be a fantastic, 80-degree hiking day on the rim. The reverse side of that, though, is down in the bottom of the canyon. During the winter, at just over 2,000 feet in elevation, which is pretty similar to Phoenix, you're going to see those fantastic winter hiking weather days in the 60s, classic. However, fast forward the summer, we all know the weather in Phoenix in the summer. You need to expect temperatures 100 degrees plus at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So a lot of variation. I think the biggest takeaway here is to make sure when you're planning your trip, check the temperature at both the rim and the bottom of the canyon. Make sure you pack accordingly.
Yeah, that's great advice, Josh. And once somebody does finally arrive at Phantom Ranch, what is the experience like spending time there and staying there?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Um, I like to sum it up, and it's like summer camp for adults. It's quiet, it's peaceful. Obviously, you have this stunning environment surrounding you. Um, but you know what? I'll be honest. When most people get there, they're exhausted. They've had a long day on the trail, and they're like, "Oh, what do I do? Where do I go?" It's not like pulling up to the lobby of a hotel. What you want to do is get checked in. You do this at the canteen. Yeah, there in the top left corner, see a great photo, a little shade awning. Go up to the window. Friendly staff there at Phantom Ranch will get you checked in using the name on your reservation. They'll let you know what cabin you've been assigned to, and they'll also confirm any meal reservations and their associated time that you might have made with your reservation as well. So I'd do that first, get checked in, then go to your cabin, check it out. You'll see their bunk beds in the cabins, very common. Some of those smaller two-person cabins do just have like queen size beds, but most of the accommodations are bunk beds. So I'd claim your bunk. This is somewhere to be mindful of the others in your group, or even in your cabin, assessing their ability, age, who's appropriate to be on top bunk, who's appropriate to be on bottom bunk. They are mixed gendered cabins, so you'll be sharing. There's all sorts of stuff in there, hooks to hang your backpacks and gear and kind of get unpacked and comfortable. There's a toilet flushing toilet and a sink in your cabin. But after that long, dusty day on the trail, if you're itching for a shower, I'd head over to the shower house. It's kind of centrally located, about a 20-yard walk, give or take, based on which cabin you're assigned. And this shower house is set up like a gym. You know, you've got your separate gender sides. You go in there. We got a photo there. There's stacks of fresh, clean towels. You can grab one. One wing of the facility has restrooms to use. The other one has private individual shower stalls. You can take a nice hot or cold if you're there in the summer. You want to enjoy a cold shower to cool down. You can do that there as well. After that, getting sort of cleaned up, I head on over to the canteen. Um, Reminder, it closes at 4 to prepare for dinner. So if you made good time on the trail, you got there, head before 4, head over to the canteen. If you missed it, don't worry. It reopens again at 8 p.m. after dinners are served. But I'd stop in there, get a nice Lemmy's lemonade. Remember, save your glass. If you reuse the same glass, you get $1 off on your refills. Or if you really like, enjoy a nice ice cold beer or even a relaxing glass of wine. I'm, I mean, no matter how many times I've been there, I'm always amazed that like they serve ice cold beer at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Just like having just hiked down the trail that same beer travels down, because everything comes in by mule, you really appreciate it. They accept cash, credit cards, so no worries there. They also got a good variety of sweet and salty snacks if you're still a little hangry after that long day on the trail.
That sounds great. What if I want to call home and tell
Mhm.
someone, hey, I made it. I made it to Phantom Ranch. Am I going to be able to use my phone down there?
Again, one of my favorite spots of going there. No, but with an asterisk. Um, are starting to see a little bit of spotty cell phone coverage down there, but only enough to allow mainly to receive a text. This varies by phone providers, of course. But for the most part, do not rely on any sort of cell service. There is no Wi-Fi. It is a great place to go. You feel like you're going back in time and you disconnect. Those that may have, a family life or something going on where they need reliable connectivity. If you do hike up canyon a little bit towards the Clear Creek Trail and even up on the Clear Creek Trail, the cell service does become a little bit more reliable, certainly for receiving text and getting a text out. But I caution anybody who's going to be dependable on actual like phone, um, making a phone call, receiving a phone call. I just wouldn't rely on it.
So part of the experience is an opportunity to disconnect and
Absolutely.
be be apart from the from the sort of the ongoing communication we're all
Yeah.
receiving and sending all of the time. Um, if I'm
There used to
Yeah,
be a payphone down there.
you,
Um, I think it still exists in some photos, on the web, but the last time I was down there, it has been removed. So
mm,
again, I would not rely on that payphone being there anymore.
okay. So people will want to plan ahead if they absolutely must be in contact with folks while they're visiting Phantom Ranch. They'll need to make plans to have an appropriate kind of device to make sure they can do that. What if I'm good with that? I just want to use my phone, let's say, to take photos while I'm there. Am I going to be able to charge my phone in my cabin, let's say?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Nowadays our phones are our cameras as well. So, yep, there's outlets both in all of the cabins as well as in the canteen. Very common to see people hanging out during the day, filling out postcards and that in the canteen, and grabbing some juice out of an outlet, charging up their phone.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, Josh. That's so helpful. So You've mentioned already like various ways to access Phantom Ranch via the trails from the North Rim and the South Rim. I'd love to dig into this one a little bit deeper with you and understand better, starting with the South Rim. What is a typical experience like hiking in and out via the South Rim? And why does Mountain Travel Sobek recommend spending 2 nights at Phantom Ranch when possible versus a single overnight?
Yeah, yeah, great questions. You know, you can design and tailor your trip for a lot of different ways, but standard terms here, for someone coming in from out of state, you fly into Phoenix, you got a 4-hour drive through the Sonoran Desert up to the high country to get to the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Given that time, I really recommend staying a night on the south rim of the Grand Canyon, especially if you haven't been there before. Just enjoying those sunset views, grabbing a nice dinner at one of the local lodges there on the rim, and just take the time to prepare, assess the weather, get your pack situated for that next day's hike in. That second day, then you've got all day. You don't have to worry about rushing in. You've got the day to enjoy the trail and that 7 or 10 mile hike in to Phantom Ranch. To your point, then, if you got the opportunity, you've got the time and ability, stay a second night in Phantom Ranch. You go through all this effort to travel there, to hike in. It's such an incredible place. So few people get to experience it. Staying there a second night offers up a whole wide opportunity of different things to do. Um, Access the trails that you wouldn't be able to just hike if you're doing a day trip to the Grand Canyon. For instance, going up the Clear Creek Trail, wandering up the North Kaibab Trail, even just doing the river loop. There's some great ruins to go check out down along Boat Beach as well. Just even hanging out down at Boat Beach, watch some of the river runners come in, talk to them about their journey so far. They're on mile 89 and a half of a 270 plus mile river journey on the Grand Canyon. Some of them will be doing an exchange there. You'll see some river runners getting off and a new group hiking in. But you talk to the staff. The staff that work there at Phantom Ranch are incredible, and they dedicate so much of their life to operating this facility and really serving the guests who come there and visit. To work at Phantom Ranch, it's a 1 year minimal commitment to be hired and live and work down there. So chatting with them about their experience and life below the rim is really cool. Having that second day allows you that opportunity. If you can't, that's great. You still were able to visit Phantom Ranch, and that's fantastic. Um, and then after that, it comes time to hike up and out. I like to come up the Bright Angel Trail. It is a little bit longer. People are like, why wouldn't you go out to South Kaibab? It's 7 miles versus 10. It's shorter. True. And depending on your ability and preference, you may want to do that, depending on time of year. Remember, there's no water available on the South Kaibab Trail. So hiking up 7 miles with no water available, you're going to have a heavier pack. Hence why I like going out the Bright Angel. You've got access to water. You don't need to carry so much weight. You can refill along the way. I will caution that and check in the cantina. It's an old system providing the water there in the Grand Canyon. There are disruptions to the water supply from time to time, but they will post all of these, what water supplies are open and available, which ones may be closed. Make sure you always check in the canteen before you actually lace up and hike out that day. Um, and then when you get to the top, you can either head home, head back to where you came, or continue on to your journeys. Or if time allows, spend another night on the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Really celebrate what you just experienced and accomplished with a nice accommodation, celebratory dinner, I'd say at El Tovar. Um, it's really nice to again have that extra time.
That makes sense. And it's Your day departing Phantom and hiking out of the canyon is going to be a big day to begin with. So if you're
Yeah.
planning on traveling home that day, you're going to have to drive at least as far as Flagstaff, I think, is what you said, or potentially all the way to Phoenix. So some pretty compelling reasons to spend one more night on the rim at the end.
Yeah. Yep, you're right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You shared a couple of things about how people can spend time down at Phantom Ranch that I thought were really interesting in it, and I was thinking about something you'd said earlier that we no longer have a pool down there, but it can be
Yeah.
103 degrees down there. You said, is there a place I can get in the water somewhere down at Phantom Ranch if I want to cool off during the day and I'm not out, say, hiking the trails or at the
Yeah,
canteen?
absolutely. You've got two options. You've got Bright Angel Creek, which flows right next to the ranch. Easy to walk over there, get some access to the creek. Short half-mile hike down to the Colorado River as well is another great option. With the Colorado River, be extremely careful with the currents. This is a massive river. I've never seen anybody hike with a personal flotation device. So be mindful of that. Boat Beach is a great area. Um, Big eddy there, minimal currents, easy access to the Colorado River, um, which is nice and chilly. Typically around like 55 degrees there at Phantom Ranch, so it'll cool you down quick.
That sounds pretty good if it's going to be that warm outside. This is a great overview for a 4-day trip. And, you'd mentioned earlier that another way to think about this could be to go from rim to rim. Um, Love to hear a little bit more about how does the South Rim loop experience you just described compare with a typical rim to rim hiking experience where someone would start out on the North Rim, let's say, and end in the same location on the South Rim?
Yeah, yeah, great question. Another way to visit Phantom Ranch, like we talked about earlier, is from the North Rim. However, most people do this, they don't want to hike back out to the North Rim. They want to continue across the canyon and do what's called a rim to rim and come out the South Rim. Fantastic way to experience the canyon. Couple of things to be mindful of here. Extra physical consideration for that longer, steeper hike in. You also need to plan for the logistics. Accessing the North Rim of the Grand Canyon is pretty remote. They haven't made a big bridge across the canyon yet. You got to drive around. So that extends the drive time from if you're coming from Phoenix, you now got a 5.5 hour commute. You're definitely going to want to spend a day on the North Rim before doing that hike in. If you've made it all the way to the North Rim, maybe not a bad idea to spend a couple of days up there. Again, so few people get up there. Less than 10% of the visitors to the park go to the North Rim. It's really unique. That higher elevation gives different vegetation, plant, animal, wildlife viewings than you get on the South Rim. Spend a day, even two up there if you can. And then, of course, that hike in. Now you've got a 14-mile hike. This is very different than a 7-mile hike or even a 10-mile hike in. So you need to make sure you prepared for that. Something else there with that logistics, think about how you're going to get to the North Rim and then how you're going to get back from the South Rim. Um, the vehicle needs to, and your belongings, your extra items that you don't take into Phantom Ranch need to get transferred from the North Rim to the South Rim. There are some services to shuttle you up there, just something to consider it, can be considerate of. But then kind of same itinerary, hike into Phantom Ranch. Again, if you got the opportunity, I'd really recommend spending 2 nights in Phantom Ranch. Again, if you can't, that's great. At least visiting the place is incredible. And then hiking up and out again, the South Rim. Um, Same situation there. If you've got the time, spend an extra day on the South Rim, enjoy a nice lodging and meal there at El Tovar before you continue on with your travels.
That's great, Josh. And I know that, the work that you do on the MT Sobek programs, whether it's a South Rim Loop hike or a rim to rim hike, you're looking at all of these various factors that go into planning a really smooth experience and thinking about each step of that so that the people have a best opportunity possible to really not just complete the experience, but to do it in a way that's enjoyable. On empty Sobek trips, um, when we're going rim to rim, are all of those things covered? Is all of that provided? How are things like lodging handled and shuttles handled and all of the various logistical things that you're describing here?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. The beauty of our trips is we've planned and taken care of all of that. All of our trips to Phantom Ranch start and end in Phoenix. Very easy access, airport to access anywhere in the world. And we've planned everything from there. Transportation to either the South Rim or the North Rim. How the extra gear and equipment gets shuttled around and is waiting for you on the South Rim when we hike up and out. Not only have we planned the reservations and meal times in Phantom Ranch, we've also taken care of those lodging and meals on the rims, either North Rim or South Rim, on either end of our hike in and out of Phantom Ranch. All taken care of, all planned for. All you have to do is to, put in the training and effort to get physically ready for it. We've taken care of all the logistics, all of the permitting, all the reservations. Um, and beyond that, the guides are there to ensure your safety, well-being, but also to share stories with you and enhance that experience. But you're right, we've something you can certainly plan and do on your own. But it's also something that um, Mountain Travel Sobek has packaged and put together. And whether you are looking for that rim to rim title and you specifically want to do that itinerary, or if you're most interested in just seeing Phantom Ranch and you've got time limitations on when you can travel, we've got great options that go in and out from the South Rim as well.
That's great, Josh. And when I think about an empty Sobek trip, I think one of the things that comes to mind straight away, in addition to all of the details being handled the way you're describing, is these phenomenal world-class friendly expert guides that are there with you every step of the way. How does empty Sobek choose guides for a trip like this, and what can you tell us about some of these folks?
Yeah, you're right there. We're absolutely honored to have some of the best guides in the industry. Um, Beyond having the essential skills and certifications required to ensure that safe journey, regulations with the park and so on, we go beyond that and really select guides that are passionate about the areas that we share with our guests, that they're knowledgeable of the areas and they share that with you in a way that enhances your experience. Not only are you seeing the environment, they're teaching you about the local flora, fauna, culture, history, geology, adding a lot of color to your experience. These are individuals that have dedicated their professional lives to this craft, and they're excited to share their knowledge and their love of the Grand Canyon with their guests.
That sounds great. And I'm I'm thinking I'm thinking back to some of what you'd shared with us earlier, Josh, about how yourself as a guide, and also I know many of the guides that will be leading these trips. Um, Not just taking athletes down the canyon, right? We talk about how this is a challenging hike and folks need to be prepared, but you mentioned people with all kinds of different ability levels and people of ages from, I think you said 7 to 77 years old.
Yeah, yeah,
Certainly guides at MT Sobek are prepared to take diverse groups of people into the Grand Canyon and make sure that they have a great time doing it. But folks do need to prepare. Folks
yeah.
need to take some time and really think through what it's going to take to be able to be physically and mentally ready for an experience like this. So, in terms of how people can ready themselves, These MT Sobek trips are level 4 and level 5 trips. These are the most physically
Hmm.
challenging trips that we offer. What can you tell us about training for these hikes in advance of the trip, and what sort of tips might you offer people who are gearing up?
Yeah, yeah, you're totally right. Our guides are incredible, but they're not miracle workers. There's a certain onus on the individual to properly prepare for these trips, and that training and preparation should be taken seriously. Um, you need to do a significant amount of training, possibly months in advance, and it all varies based on your current baseline and fitness level. Um, but most importantly, you need to feel confident in your ability to hike uphill and downhill for as long as 8 hours. Um, Practicing the downhill can be very challenging. For instance, if you live in Kansas or Nebraska, how do you train and practice for elevation change or even elevation? Um, a couple of options here is if you live in an urban environment, think about going to an office building. See if you can take an elevator to the top and ride it down. Even climb up. As important as it is to train for the uphill, and most people are concerned with that, I really, really encourage people as well to train for the downhill. People think that that's easy, but I promise you, it uses a different set of muscles that if you haven't conditioned, you will quickly learn about. Especially if you're climbing in and out of that top bunk in Phantom Ranch, your calves will let you know if you were prepared for that downhill or not. And something is going to a parking garage and walking the staircases at a parking garage, or even high school stadium or college stadium, going up and down the bleachers. All of this training, as well as I'd work up to doing with pack weight. You should expect to be carrying 15 to 25 pounds in your pack weight, and I would train with that pack weight on as well.
Those are great tips. I really appreciate that. The sense that making sure that you're training with weight on your back so that you
Hmm.
understand what that's going to feel like, and preferably with the pack you're going to be carrying and in
Yeah.
the boots that you'll be hiking in, really help people make sure they're completely ready for the trip. You also have called out here a little bit around the idea of a hydration plan. So should they be carrying water when they're training to get a feel for what that's like? How much might they carry?
Yeah, absolutely. Train as though you're doing the hike. So carry all the same things that you would that you would plan to have on your hike. Water, this varies. It varies. What trail are you hiking in on?
Mm-hmm.
How much, what water is available, and what's the distance in between those water refill stations? What's the temperature? However, generalize this, I'd say prepare to carry 3 to 4 liters of water. Remember, this is an arid desert environment. You're exerting yourself. You need to stay properly hydrated. 3 to 4 liters minimum.
That's great, Josh. So
I
it's even if I live in a place where I don't have access to train at altitude, or I don't have a lot of topography that's going to give me opportunities to hike up and down a lot of elevation gain or loss, I can still simulate that using some of the tips that you've given us here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So I know one question that's probably on a lot of people's minds that are listening in today is that famously it's been said that it's harder to secure a reservation at Phantom Ranch than it is to get into a lot of Ivy League schools. So why is
Yeah.
it so hard to reserve an overnight stay at Phantom Ranch, and how do you win at the game? Like, how does someone attempt to make a reservation at Phantom Ranch?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, Justin. I've heard it another way as well. As some say that it's the hardest part of visiting Phantom Ranch is getting the reservation. That the
Mm,
hike is the easy part. You're right, though. However you look at it, getting a reservation at Phantom Ranch is very challenging. It's simple. It's supply and demand. Remember, Phantom Ranch can accommodate 90 people maximum. Right now, that's been reduced to 50, and it'll be that way at least for the next year. 50 people a night, yet thousands and thousands hope to visit every month. Um, it's a lottery system, and that lottery system is how you obtain a reservation. Reservations are become available on an online lottery system the first of the month for reservations 15 months in advance. Can be a little confusing, so I'll break that down. So April 1st, here in a couple of days of 2025, you can apply for a stay in Phantom Ranch anytime during the month of June 2026. That application period to apply is open for 25 days. So you have between April 1st and April 25th to apply for a stay in Phantom Ranch anytime during the month of June 2026. Winners will be notified early in the month, so of the following month. So early May, you'll find out if you were selected for one of those spots. Now, how you can increase your odds when you apply online, you can either select a specific date or dates. You can also select a date range. So the greater flexibility you have, the higher your odds of winning. Beyond that, those that are incredibly flexible with their schedules and can travel last minute, I'd encourage you to check out for cancellations. Same website they'll have up there, you can check for openings anytime from tomorrow up until that lottery period. So anytime between tomorrow and through May of 2026, any leftover inventory that wasn't claimed during the lottery period or any cancellations, that's where it's posted, and you can snag some spots there as well. They often are posted last minute, as you do have up to 3 days cancellation with no penalty. And again, because people make these reservations, 14, 15 months in advance, life happens. Um, your situation and availability to travel during that time may change. So some people have to cancel last minute. I check there as well.
Great.
Um,
And yeah, and Josh, is you that's such a great overview of how what a person will need to do if they're trying to go through the lottery system to secure their space. Obviously, another option they have is to go guided. Could you tell us a little bit
so
about sort of how it works if a person chooses to go guided alternatively?
yeah, you mentioned earlier, Mountain Travel Sobek has done that process. We've participated in the lottery system just as everyone else, obtained the permits as well as additional lodging and dining reservations, carefully packaged all of that for you to allow you sort of a seamless and enjoyable experience facilitated by really skilled guides.
That's great. Thanks so much, Josh. I think the 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 benefits of being able to choose any date you want in any time frame and know that in addition to having the Phantom Ranch reservations done, you're going to have all full service experience with an expert guide and
Mm.
all the transportation covered, all of the lodging that you need covered. I think really does make going guided an attractive option. And the MT Sobek trips, of course, lots of choice there. A number of different itineraries. If you want to visit from the South Rim, if you want to visit and hike rim to rim, different lengths of trips available and dates available throughout the year. So we still have a few minutes available here in the session. I really want to thank Josh for sharing all of this expertise and also give Josh a chance to answer some audience questions. Obviously, just before we do that, quick reminder: the MT Sobek guided all-inclusive Phantom Ranch trips that we have available are scheduled to operate year-round. South Rim Loop hikes are available, rim to rim hikes are available. And as we secure reservations at Phantom Ranch, we'll continue adding dates throughout the year. So if you're looking at what's available after the session today, and you're not seeing the date that you want far enough out, for your planning, keep checking back with us because we'll continue posting more dates as we get more space. Super easy to book online or by phone with a credit card, and a deposit will hold your place with MT Sobek. So we'd love to have you have a look at what we have to offer if you're excited about trying to get down to Phantom Ranch, and going guided is the best option for you. Let's see what questions we have in the chat. The first one I see here from Jaydeep. Josh, the question is, what is the best way to explore guided trips this year?
Yeah, certainly. I'd check out the MT Sobek website. Depending on the time of year that you're looking to travel, we've got different options available. In 2025, we've got 4 different itineraries. And while they've been very popular trips, there are some spots still available throughout the year. So going to our website is the best place to check current availability, or picking up the phone, calling the 1-800 number you see there, and chatting with one of our reservation specialists. They'll be able to quickly answer what dates as well as how many spots are available on that date.
That's great. Thanks, Josh. And I see, thanks to Tara as well for posting a link in the chat where people can get straight into where you can learn more about MT Sobek guided Grand Canyon Phantom Ranch tours. Another question in the chat here. Thank you so much, Julie, from Sarah and Tom. If you are a very strong hiker, can you hike ahead of the group, or do you try to keep the group together?
For the most part in group travel, the purpose is to travel as a group. But certainly, as guides and other people recognize, there are different comfort levels as well as ability in the group. And ultimately, it's up to the guides to assess what is best in that given situation. Clearly, there's opportunities to hike ahead at your own comfortable pace, but likely the guide will set a designated location where they'll ask for you to pause, enjoy the views of the canyon, maybe take some photographs, and let the group catch back up. So you almost kind of play this accordion effect throughout the day. Depending on the group size and the number of guides, 1 or 2 guides, this can play out a little bit different each time as well. Sometimes we have enough guests or guides that we can even split the group into 2 paces. Those that want some more time to enjoy and examine different parts of the canyon, and those that are looking for more of a workout or a faster pace is kind of more in line with their natural stride, can accommodate that as well.
That's great. Thanks, Josh. So there's some flexibility there for strong hikers
Yeah.
when they're traveling with MT Sobek. That's great to hear. And got a couple more questions in the chat here in a few more minutes. We'll continue here. We've got a question from Barry about what effect will the reductions in force of national park personnel have on Phantom Ranch and hiking opportunities? This is something I know that MT Sobek certainly has been tuned into and following closely by staying connected directly with the folks in the National Park Service whom we work with on permitting and various other things. Our best current understanding is that the park will be well staffed for the visitation that is expected this summer. And Josh, I don't know if there's anything that you would add to that.
Yeah, to your point, the messaging we're receiving from the park is that the activities that were associated with the park will not be impacted by any of the staff reductions.
Yeah, so this is something we'll continue monitoring closely at MT Sobek, so that if there is any anticipated impact, we can plan for it appropriately. And really appreciate that question, Barry, because it's an important one. Laura has asked, average temperatures for the November and December trips, Josh. And I suppose that depends if you're talking about on the rim or at Phantom Ranch.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. You kind of, well, December, you certainly get more into that winter season. November and Phantom Ranch, One of my favorite times to be down there. I'd honestly say November and April are kind of my favorite times to be down in Phantom Ranch. Again, being at just over 2,000 feet in elevation, you see temperatures that are very similar to what's experienced there in the Sonoran Desert. April, or excuse me, November, you can expect mid 60s during the day for high temps, could be as high as 70. Um, Fantastic hiking weather that time of year.
Great. That's great. And Deborah asked in the chat about Phantom Ranch accommodations, whether they're private or shared. And Tara provided a really great, some really great insight here, distinguishing between the dorms and the cabins, where the cabins are reserved as a private unit. And if you reserve that unit as a visitor, then that cabin will belong to your group. If you travel with MT Sobek, you'll share that cabin with other members of the MT Sobek group. Whereas the dorms, even if you reserve those as a visitor privately, you'll be sharing those spots with other visitors. So if you have further questions about that, please drop them into the chat. But I do think Tara did a terrific job addressing that
Mhm.
one. Deborah's asking if there's a single supplement, and I think that'll be the last question we have time for today. So Josh, maybe you could talk with us a little bit about single supplement.
Yeah, there is a single supplement available on these trips. It does vary in price based on which itinerary you choose. And I do want to just caution here that that single supplement only applies to the lodging on the rim, either before and or after our hike out. There is not an opportunity to have single accommodations while in Phantom Ranch. Those are joined group cabins in Phantom Ranch.
That's right. Thanks so much for that clarification, Josh. Thank you, everybody, for attending this today. It's really been
Yeah.
a pleasure, Josh, chatting with you about Phantom Ranch, as always. And I really appreciate the wonderful questions from folks. We did not get to every single question in the chat, so I want to assure you that Tara and Julie, who are supporting us here today, will make sure that we do get all of our questions answered. So thank you for making time to be here with us. And if you have other information you'd like, the contact info that you see on the slide here is a great way to get a hold of us. You may be planning going forward and thinking of new questions you didn't have today. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us anytime. We'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. And this contact info is the best way to reach us. We are always glad to hear from you and help to make your travel dreams a reality here at MT Sobek. So best to you all. Thank you for making the time today. We really hope that we will see you in the Grand Canyon one day really soon. Thanks.
Thank you.